One of the key pieces of the job search that many trainees have limited experience with is the job interview. Because of this and the perceived stake of the activity, job interviews can be stressful. With this video, we want to introduce some ways to prepare for the job interview and prepare to answer interview questions. Another key action you may want to try is to carry out some practice interviews with peers, with friends, or with family. There's also software that can help you to practice answering job interview questions. In this short video, we'll touch on how you might prepare for a job interview, how you can answer standard questions that come up in interviews, and we'll give you some special tips for video job interviews. Typically, an interview is going to focus on two things: yourself and your work, and the employer and the role. To answer questions effectively, you'll need to know about both of these. More of the interview, of course, will focus on you and your past work, but it's your job to not just talk about yourself, but to synthesize the information in a way that convinces the interviewer about your experience and with your stories that you're a good match for the job. Here's a short set of steps that you can put into action when you're preparing for an interview. Read the job description. Underline key skills in the job description. Think of stories that might help support that you have that skill or that attribute or that experience. Highlight the same in your CV. Make notes about the matches and the stories between yourself and the work you're applying to do. Think about yourself. Reflect on why you want this job, what you want to do in this role, how it fits into your future plan. And give some thought to how you work or how you approach work. Things like how you approach time management, managing people, offering and receiving feedback. What's your process in these kinds of circumstances or cases? You want to have an understanding about your process and be able to describe these. It will help you to answer questions. If you're still a little bit confused about what your approach to work is, you may find that there are some articles on the Harvard Business Review that might be helpful. Now, the next thing you'll do is research the employer. At the stage of the interview, this is more important than ever. You need to understand the employer, their needs, and how you believe that you can fill those needs. You can learn more about the employer from their website, from their mission statement, from the products and services that they offer that you should know in detail. Their annual report may be public. And you may even be able to find some information about what's important to them in the future. Let's review now some key questions that you'll want to prepare for and what the employer's goals are in asking these questions. The first is tell me about yourself, or a question like that. Walk me through your CV. This is an opportunity for you to showcase your CV resume, and that's what the employer wants to know, is what is in fact your value proposition that makes you a good match for the job. It's also a nice way to ease into the interview for both the interviewer and the interviewee, because you know yourself well, or you should, and they want to get to know you. You do want to be specific and succinct with your answer. One way that you might choose to answer is to talk about three things. Your current role in the present, the scope of that role, and any recent achievement. What you've done in the past that supports you for doing the work that you're applying for or interviewing for. This is not a chronological walkthrough of your CV. You want to pick out and be selective here about the stories or the experiences that you think are a good match. And your future, why this work? Why are you interested in the position? It's your opportunity to be passionate about the work that you're applying to do. How about questions focused around your strengths and your weaknesses? What's important here is honesty, and that you show that you have self-awareness and that you're open to feedback and that you know how you might deal or handle feedback. Everyone has strengths and weaknesses. If possible, you'll want to tell a story, a time that a strength helped you to achieve something in a professional role, or when a weakness maybe impeded you, but you put in effort to overcome it or to improve it. When you're answering this type of question, you need to be specific about what the strength is. Give it a bit of life. It shouldn't be a one-word strength such as leadership. You want to be able to double back on that strength again in a story and explain how you demonstrated it. And then you can also talk about how it's important to the position you're applying for. Here are just some examples of strengths, just to give you an idea of what it looks like to have a strength that's more than one word, that has a bit of life. And you can almost feel that these connect to stories that someone would have. Similarly, for your weaknesses, you do not want to say a one-word weakness. You want it to have at least some context. In your story, you can double back on how you've grown from knowing this weakness, or how you worked to improve it. A type of question that's also relatively common in interviews are behavioral questions. How are you going to spot behavioral questions? They'll typically begin with something like, have you ever, what would you do, how do you, or give me an example. Your goal is exactly that, to give a convincing example or story that shows that you possess the skill that they're looking for. Take some time to think about the question if you need to. And this is where that preparation in advance of trying to come up with stories and examples from your past work comes into play. A standard format answer for these kinds of questions is the STAR format. You would take the stories or examples and you'll put them into this format. First, you'll talk about the situation. Then you'll talk about your role, the task, what was expected of you. Then the action. This is an important piece. What did you do? And be specific and describe the process if there was a process. And what was the result? Leave it on a positive note. What was achieved? What was the result? This is supposed to show that you have the skill that they're asking about. The pitfall that some people fall into is they spend too much time in this kind of an answer on talking about the situation, and your focus should really be as much as possible on the action and the result. So that's where you want to spend the bulk of your time in answering this kind of a question. If you're looking for examples of the STAR technique, you can find many of these on the internet, and we'll put a couple of examples also in the comments of this video. In today's environment, you may, of course, find that employers will ask to conduct job interviews with you online. Here are some general pointers. You want to test your technology in advance. Be aware of nonverbal behavior. Smile, it still makes a difference over the internet. And have notes nearby, which is one of the nice elements of doing interviews online, but make sure that they're not in a place or you're not using them in a distracting way, because you do want to be looking at the people, right? And at the camera, which is going to communicate you to the people. One of the best ways to prepare for the interview and to get comfortable with interviews is to practice. So practice and ask a peer to do a mock interview with you. And if you still want more practice, it's a great idea. Book a mock interview well in advance with your university career services. For more information about life science careers, for more videos, follow us on Facebook, the Desjardins Center for Advanced Training, le Centre Desjardins de Formation Avancée, or head to our YouTube site.